Thank you so much, and I am just so honored to be here. Thank you for your remarks and your hospitality, Mayor Gualtieri, and to all of our colleagues here. Buon pomeriggio, if it's still pomeriggio at this point. Eminences, excellencies, mayors and governors, academicians, and members of the diplomatic corps, good afternoon. I am deeply grateful to His Holiness Pope Francis for opening the doors of this sacred space to these essential conversations, and for the inspirational leadership in championing the health of our planet, urging care for our common home, and catalyzing change across the globe. To my friend and council member, Chancellor Marcelo Suarez Orozco, to council member Professor Ram Ramanathan, and all the members and leaders of the Pontifical Academies, thank you for convening this summit and for the honor of joining so many global leaders shaping our future every day. I am blessed to be here as part of Team Boston and Massachusetts, here with our, we have a big crowd in the house. Go Celtics. We have our Green New Deal director, Oliver Sellers-Garcia here. And of course, I could not be more blessed to have a partner at the state level in Governor Maura Healey, our green governor, and her climate chief, Melissa Hoffer. So my focus today is on energy and governance, and I'm already incredibly energized by all that has happened this week. But I want to start with just a moment on why this is such a deep honor for me. In addition to being mayor of Boston, I'm also a mom of 2 boys. You may have seen them running around earlier today, and my prayer for the morning was that they not break anything in that space, and we made it through, so thank you. And I'm also a daughter of immigrants, and so I grew up as the oldest child to parents who did not speak English for most of my childhood, with a clear sense of not only the invisible barriers that so many communities face, but also how small the world is and how interconnected we all are. I also am here, if you had said to that young immigrant daughter that one day I would get the chance to sit here among you all, it would have been beyond my wildest imagination, and maybe beyond the imagination of others as well. One of the first acts that I had to do in my official capacity as mayor was quite weighty. There was a lot happening with the pandemic and so much that we were working on, but then one of my team members said, you know, there's this little thing that you have to do, because it turned out we were renovating City Hall Plaza outside, and when major renovations happen, you put a time capsule in. And one of the things, in addition to adding mementos for the future, hundreds of years later when it might be opened, the job of the mayor is to write a letter to that mayor who will open it a century or more into the future. And just a couple weeks into the job, that was quite intimidating for me. What do I say 100 years into the future? So I did some research and pulled the 3 time capsules that were found in recent times. There was one from 1830, one from 1930, and one from 1981. And they shared 2 things. First, each of the mayors wrote a letter to their future predecessor sharing their wildest imagination in medical advances, technology, alternative energy sources, flying cars, all that they dreamed might happen. But for all of that bold imagination, the second thing that those letters shared was a very specific constraint in who they thought might be opening that letter one day. The first letter read, "Sir," as a salutation. The second letter read, "Dear Sir," and the third letter read, "Dear Mr. Mayor," in 1981. So for all that they could imagine, they never thought that one day it might be a mom and a woman sitting in that seat opening that letter. Now, I share this to double down on what His Holiness shared earlier today, that to make this real, it must include all of us, and it must include all of us thinking and taking action beyond even our current wildest imagination. Our goal in Boston is to make our city a home for everyone, from every background, every generation, every walk of life. And for me, home is where your basic needs are met, where you're healthy, happy, and safe. But home is where your dreams can grow. Home is where you're with the people that you love. And for me, it has been a treasure to represent the jewel of our home. 40 square miles, sorry for the miles, don't know the kilometers, with 47 miles of coastline, 13 more than the Amalfi Coast, but who's counting? Our three major rivers, the Charles, the Mystic, the Neponset, crisscross our city, and around this time of year, their grassy banks are packed with people enjoying the beautiful weather. Each of our many neighborhoods has its unique character and culture. Jamaican jerk chicken in Nubian Square, pho in Little Saigon, soup dumplings in Chinatown, arancini in the North End, cobblestone streets and cutting-edge labs, old granite churches, and glistening glass towers. But where I feel most at home is in the 9 square miles of parks, green spaces, and urban wilds, an essential part of our common home that is only ours today because of careful stewardship and leadership generations ago. Nearly 400 years ago, Boston's townspeople came together and agreed that each household would pay 6 shillings more in taxes to turn private farmland into a public park, the very first public park in America. To be clear, Americans don't often volunteer to pay more taxes. But Boston has always understood the connection between healthy green spaces and the health of our communities. So in an era where nowhere else on the continent were municipal governments thinking about open space as a public good, we established the Boston Common. Now, like many mayors in this room and other leaders, I don't get much free time, but when some precious slice of time opens up, my family and I slip away to Boston's biggest park, Franklin Park. Its historic winding paths and rolling hills and dense forest is a sanctuary of stillness and beauty, and among the very first spaces in America where there was a commitment that parks should be open to everyone from every economic background. It's the place where I'm most reminded that to truly be good stewards of our home, we must recognize the earth not only as our one and only home, but as God's creation, and therefore treat it as sacred, with the care and reverence it deserves. So it is from this intersection of personal connection, faith, and faith in our future, and Boston's proud tradition of innovating public goods for healthier communities that shapes our approach to tackling the challenge of climate change. Just as Boston led the way in the United States around public parks as public infrastructure for health, today that next frontier is around clean energy as necessary infrastructure. And we've been taking action to align our financial incentives with our values. The very first bill I signed as mayor was an ordinance requiring Boston to fully divest from fossil fuels by the end of 2025. But as I was proud to write in a shared op-ed with Mayor Khan, head of the UN Climate Summit last fall, we also need to be actively not just divesting, but investing in our future. And that's why since 2021, our city has invested $400 million in environmental, social, and governance, or ESG funds. And in the next several months, the city will, for the first time ever, invest money from our trust fund into an ESG portfolio through a sustainable investments manager co-founded by former US Vice President and longtime climate leader Al Gore. Of course, as a local government determined to build clean energy infrastructure in support of healthier communities, the most intuitive levers for us to pull are legislative. And that's why last year I signed an executive order eliminating fossil fuels in all new municipal construction and renovations. Now in Boston, buildings account for 70% plus of our total emissions citywide. When in this eternal city, I feel I have to speak a little more softly about how old and historic Boston's buildings are. But whether you're counting the structures in millennia or in centuries, the scale of retrofitting that needs to be done is vast. If we are serious about dramatically reducing our carbon footprint, focusing on the building sector is targeting the soul of the shoe. So, not only did the city several years ago adopt a landmark legislation that applied to set standards for the largest buildings to come into compliance and reporting, but more recently, we upped those standards even more with transformative amendments to ensure that this benchmarking tool would actually reduce emissions and take action. The new Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance explicitly shifts our goals and expands building eligibility. Today, the buildings that meet those criteria account for just 5% of the total buildings, but more than 40% of total emissions. And more than any other tool, this stands to make an impact on helping us meet our net zero emissions goal. It also creates opportunities for us to invest in social determinants for health. As building owners strive to meet their emissions targets, they'll need skilled workers capable of monitoring, maintaining, and updating their energy systems. Last year, we added a new building operations career pathway to our PowerCore Green Jobs program that provides young people with a roadmap to livable wages, good benefits, and emerging green jobs. I joined our most recent PowerCore graduates at their commencement in December, where I spoke with a young man named Slater. Slater came to the US from Haiti when he was just 7 years old. His family eventually settled down just outside of Boston, but things were rocky at home. He and his stepmom didn't get along, and when he turned 18, he left and began living on the streets. Then he heard about the PowerCore program, applied, and found his groove in the building operations track. Today, Slater is a full-time maintenance engineer, optimizing temperature, electricity, and airflow in a big, beautiful building downtown. Our planet, our downtown, and young people like Slater are healthier because we are determined to share every benefit clean energy brings across all our communities. And while large commercial buildings offer the greatest opportunities for us to cut overall emissions and create new jobs, we're making it easier to decarbonize residential buildings as well. We've launched 2 green energy retrofit pilot programs that offer owners of small multifamily homes, much of our housing stock, as well as affordable housing units, funding to electrify their buildings. So far, the estimated energy savings for the products we're funding range from 43% to 72% cost savings, and similar reductions in operational emissions. And at least one of the projects will add rooftop solar panels, taking a cue from Boston's Archdiocese, which several years ago installed a solar field in its parking lot capable of generating a megawatt of electricity. We've also recognized for many of our residents, there's a perception that going green isn't for everyone, that it's a luxury reserved for a certain class who can afford to pay a lot more to minimize their impact. But alongside colleagues, environmental groups, and organizing from the ground up, Boston passed our Community Choice Electricity Program, BCCE, a municipal energy aggregation program that leverages the city's collective buying power to purchase cleaner, locally sourced electricity in bulk. We then provide that power to residents and businesses in the form of 3 different packages, including 100% renewable energy, all at a lower cost than the utility-provided alternative. Since launching in 2021, we have saved customers more than $160 million on electricity bills, all while accelerating our climate goals. One of those customers is a man named Louis. Louis has lived in Boston for 54 years and retired on disability a while back, now living off of less than $27,000 a year. His electricity rates were unpredictable, and some months he was paying as much as $300. But since switching to our municipal aggregation program, his bills have gone down by more than half. That's money in his pocket for medical expenses, groceries, housing, toys for his 4 grandkids. And it's not just Louis. Today, more than 70% of all residential, commercial, and industrial electricity contracts in Boston are enrolled in this aggregation, protecting our planet and improving residents' financial health in ways that enable more investments in mental and physical health. And while we know that planetary health and personal wealth are deeply connected to individual physical health, I want to be clear that we see every day the direct and immediate impact that our energy infrastructure has on residents' well-being. Asthma rates among Boston's public housing residents are more than double that of homeowners. And we know that gas stoves are responsible for more than 15% of all childhood asthma cases in Massachusetts. Thanks to $1 million in federal funding and partnership with the state, we've received enough funding to be able to replace gas stoves with electric ones across some of our largest public housing developments, one of which will also be the site of Boston's first ever networked geothermal pilot project. So, we've aligned our financial incentives with our climate goals, taken legislative action to decarbonize our building sector, and created good green jobs along the way. We're making it easier for homeowners to electrify their buildings, replacing gas stoves that cause respiratory illness, and helping residents and businesses go green and save money. But I want to close with a reflection on a different kind of energy. This winter was the first winter I didn't buy my boys new snow boots. They're 6 and 9, and they grow so fast that every year their feet are way too big for the last year. And they didn't grow any slower this year. But we were projected to have such milder winters, to get so little snow now in Boston over the winters, that it didn't make sense financially to buy them 2 new pairs of boots to wear once before they would outgrow them. So they had to crunch their toes up and play outside like that. The year my oldest son was born was the hottest in Boston's history and in the world. He's almost 10 now, and in the past 10 years, they have each been the hottest 10 on record. So the energy I'm talking about now is the energy of a mother who doesn't want to have had her last snow day ever with her kids. It's the energy of a mom who wants her kids to know how beautiful the Charles is, frozen over on a clear December night. Energy isn't just something we extract from the earth, from fossils and fission and the sun and the breeze. It's something we have inside all of ourselves. It gets us out of bed every morning, sustains us in the work to make the world a better place for the people we love. And it's that energy that will power the future we need. Thank you for the opportunity to share Boston's story with all of you. May God grant us the energy to do this work well.